Time for another AFL Fantasy team analysis for 2025. Today we're talking about Richmond Tigers, so let's get on down to Tigerland. Starting off with the biggest beast of them all at the Tigers, it is Toby Nankervis. The big ruckman has been underrated the last couple of years and has taken the captaincy head on and led by example by averaging over 100 in the last two seasons, picked up his marking and tackling game significantly and started to really get a lot more hitouts and scored some huge scores with a 150 and a 141 in their last year. He does go very hard at the contest and sometimes too hard, counting up a lot of frees against over the last years. But he is simply one of the safest rucks you could have coming into the 2025 season with no immediate competition really gunning for his spot, especially since, Nank is the captain as well. And you know who else is a ruck who is also a captain in their team? Max Gawn. These kind of guys are sure things to play every week and they get amongst it. So another solid year incoming for the Nank, and he is my 5th ranked ruck for the year. Next up, a beast that fell off a bit short last year, it's Tim Taranto. He's been a relevant fantasy player ever since breaking out hard in his second year, and last year was a tough one for him with the Tigers. Tim missed a chunk of the season with a fractured wrist, and he was subbed off midway through the round 20 match versus the Pies with a 40. So his average is definitely underselling his potential. Let's not forget about this guy who once averaged 112 in 2023, which is not long ago at all. If his body stays right, Taranto still has to deal with the fact that Richmond is going through a major transition, so the help around him still has the training wheels on. Whether that makes him the biggest fish of all, or if it brings him down in the year ahead, remains to be seen. Even so, 112 average a year ago is enough to bump him right up to the top midfielder echelon, and I'd be surprised if he was still on the draft board in the 3rd round. Couple of breakouts and sleepers here, and first up I've got defender Jaden Short. Not too long ago, Short was the kick-in king of the AFL, and I reckon he is about to repeat himself in 2025. As well as being injured in recent times, Short's average suffered due to Daniel Rioli taking a chunk of kick-ins for the Tigers. But he is now off to the Suns during the last trade period, and it opens up Short to a nice portion of kick-ins once again. Back between 2021 and 2023, Jaden Short averaged well into the 90s, so he was very undervalued coming into 2025 in my opinion, and one to bump right up your rankings in draft this year ahead. I think he'll definitely get back up there again this year, and I've got him ranked as my 15th best defender. Anyone who knows me knows how keen I am on Kane McAuliffe. I really rate this kid. McAuliffe is an aggressive on-baller by trade. He loves to tackle and get his fast hands and slick left boot on the ball. He averaged 110 in his draft year, and last year he was subbed on or off a few times with not great time on ground. He added some good quarters and halves of footy where he did actually explode. He is highly rated by the club's supporter base and seems to have really impressed the right people in his first year. I just reckon there is so much opportunity for McAuliffe in particular because of the Tigers' current midfield stocks. Everyone knows Taranto is a gun, but then people still think Hopper and Prestia are the future. They're in the second half of their careers and are both very prone to injury. And we'll talk about them a little bit later. But after those 3 guys, there is so much daylight in terms of opportunity in the Tigers midfield. The other kids from this year's draft crop are there now, but I don't see any of them really having a bigger impact than McAuliffe in 2025. Hoping McAuliffe can just get more games this year and stay on the park, because I think he's going to be one that really blossoms this year and becomes a solid midfield option. Speaking of another solid midfield option, Jack Ross is one that has been waiting for quite a while in what was the heyday of the Richmond Tigers. Ross is one of the most experienced of the players on the cards for more midfield time at the Tigers this year. He has been the substitute a little bit, and he missed a majority of the 2024 season with a stress fracture in his foot. But it looks like he's back in ripping form this preseason and is definitely one to keep a watch on during the preseason matches. So I'll definitely be keeping my eye on Jack Ross, and it could be a sneaky M7 or bench option for the bye rounds at least. On to the rookies now, and a couple of these kids are pretty interesting considering they were the top end talent in this super draft that just happened, and Richmond had a fantastic draft haul, didn't they? So Josh Smiley was the second pick by Richmond in the 2024 draft at pick 7, and Smiley was once considered the number 1 draft pick himself. A serious big-bodied midfielder for his age, people have compared him to Patrick Cripps and Tom Green. But I think he is an even bigger unit than both of them were at the same age, to be honest. Smiley dominated under-18 leagues to begin 2024, but as the season went on, he faded a little bit. Still waiting to see if he is a fantasy relevant player this year, but if he's getting games and stepping up in the empty Richmond midfield, he could be a fun one to watch when he does get games and a sneaky one to chuck on the bench on draft day. Next up, we've got the number 1 draft pick from last year in Sam Lawler. Okay, he was the number 1 draft pick from last year, but is he fantasy relevant? Very possibly. Apparently, he's training with the midfield in the new year and steamrolling some of the senior players already. Lawler is an absolute unit for his age, and in his junior year, he struggled a bit with injuries, but in the games he did play, he showed just how impactful he really is. He had his game of the season in his first game for the Greater Western Victoria Rebels in round 12, where he had 34 disposals, 8 marks, 5 tackles, and a 135-point day out. He had a big forward impact as well, flying for marks and booting it between the sticks pretty regularly. A big one to keep an eye on during the preseason and in the early rounds of 2025, and if he's starting forward a bit more to start the year, could get that DPP change up in round 6 or 12 or some point throughout the season. And one to beware here at the end here is a very breakable player in the form of Dion Prestia. After years of believing he could really reach those high numbers, I have finally given up faith in Dion Prestia and his body. Yes, he played a bunch of games last year, but I just don't trust it anymore. He's on my never again list, and I just reckon there are plenty of other options available. Don't run the risk of Prestia. Leave him for someone else to run that roller coaster this year. So there you have a couple of Tigers to keep an eye on for AFL Fantasy drafts this year. Hope I've given you some insight on a few good players. And yeah, if you like this video at all, please consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, tune in next time. We're going to get into some St. Kilda players, and there are some amazing players on the cards there. So tune in for that one. I'll see you then.